Let's get to John Morosi.
Okay, let's do it. Great
How are
setup.
you, John? Do you know the situation? Do you know
Chris,
anything?
I'm outstanding. Happy trade deadline to you. Actually, I've been trying feverishly in the last couple minutes to get some sourcing and some information on the A-Rod cake.
Yes.
I will endeavor to get some responses from Matt Vasgersian to get some first-hand reporting on that. But that was quite a baseball event.
It was. And the fact that the cake got put on irrevocable waivers is a shock. They
irrevocable.
Yes.
Well done, Mitch, on the appropriate baseball terminology there. That's excellent. Well done.
They DFA'd the cake. How the hell did that happen? That cake, nobody touched it. Nobody touched it.
The cake refused the assignment to AAA and it's become a free agent.
It clearly did. No, look, the plates are on. They've got a whole bunch of plates and plastic cutlery. I don't understand it. All right, John. Let's get to the actual task at hand here. Your colleague from Yahoo, Tim Brown, says that there is engagement between the Giants and the Astros on Madison Bumgarner. What are you hearing about him?
Well, I still think, Rich, that it's likely that Bumgarner stays put in San Francisco. I think that Farhan Zaidi would not be doing his job here in these final hours before the deadline if he did not entertain the offers or the interest from a club like Houston in Bumgarner. But candidly, Rich, the Giants are now above 500. They are still a good distance back in the NL wildcard race, but they're at least part of it. And given the way they've played, there is I think a strong sentiment among their fans, which is important given how they draw on the support they get there in San Francisco, that the way they've played over the last month, the fact this is Bruce Bochy's last year, all of the connections to Bumgarner's got to the championship clubs there in San Francisco are all pointing in the direction right now of Bumgarner staying. But I do think it's notable that there's at least some conversation, and I believe if the Giants are overwhelmed by an offer from the Astros, which would likely include Kyle Tucker, of course, the very highly regarded outfield prospect that Houston has. That could potentially tip the scales into the Giants' favor of doing a deal. But I think short of that, Rich, I would say that the chances of Bumgarner staying in San Francisco are still right now better than 50-50.
Well, what about the chance of Bumgarner winding up in the American League East Division, John?
Well, it's a great question, and certainly the New York Yankees, they've got a little bit more to offer right now than what the Astros do. But again, I think the tricky part, Rich, here, and we're going to find out a lot about the industry in the next 24 hours, the relatively light return that the Blue Jays got for Stroman on Sunday is frustrating a lot of the activity right now because the teams that have pitching to sell, including the Giants with Bumgarner, or the Diamondbacks with Robbie Ray and Zach Greinke, the Tigers with Matthew Boyd, the Mets still with Noah Syndergaard and Zach Wheeler. The price for Stroman was low enough that now the buyers for pitching are saying, wait a minute, I'm not going to give you a top 20 prospect. Marcus Stroman is under contract through next year, or at least under control through salary arbitration, and he did not even net back a top 100 prospect going to Toronto in that trade. So that, I think, is depressing some of the offers right now, Rich, which I think are really, it's all frustrating the process. We're basically now 26 hours away to the deadline, and I am stunned at the lack of action so far, and that would even include the fact that Bumgarner is someone who the Yankees certainly like, and the Yankees like Matthew Boyd, they like Mike Minor, they like Robbie Ray, they like a lot of guys. But I just think that the price, based on the way things were set on Sunday with the Stroman deal, has in many ways stymied a lot of the conversation. I think it's pushed the buyers and sellers further apart on what the fair market price actually is.
All right, so let's take this one at a time here. The Mets, what the hell are they doing?
Well, Rich, that is an excellent question, my friend, and one that we are hearing a lot around the industry. This is confusing. It has to begin. I think if we're going to talk about the Mets, you got to begin by talking about how Brodie Van Wagenen got this job. And from talking to sources last wintertime, Brodie had told ownership there that he could take this job and that they would not have to do a rebuild. That was what he said. This team can win now with some modifications. If you hire me, I will help you win in the next couple of years without having to do a rebuild. And that was the genesis of the Cano trade and Diaz. And, of course, that trade immediately has not worked out. For the Mets to win that trade, they would have had to win a division or a playoff berth basically this year or next year. And they're already 0-1, and unless they really change things around for next year, it's not going to happen next year either. And so I think they're just trying to make as many moves as they can now to change the conversation and change the roster. And getting Stroman, I think they got him at a fair price. But to your point, Rich, to what end? Where are you going with this? And if at the end of the day they're able to trade Wheeler for a good return and Syndergaard for a good return in the next day, then I think they can at least say, you know what, we've got a competitive club. We've got a player in Stroman who's from Long Island. He comes back home. That's a good story that you can sell to New York. I get that.
Yeah,
but unless they're able to trade Syndergaard and Wheeler for really good returns that almost restock the system of the guys they gave up to get Cano and Diaz, then it's just a merry-go-round. And they're spinning in place here. And oh, by the way, the Braves are a much better club than them. And even right now, the Nationals are too. And the Phillies, you probably would say, are as well. So they're stuck right now in the middle, Rich. And it's in isolation, the Stroman deal was a fair exchange for them. But I'm just not sure that the Mets really know where all of this is going based on what I'm seeing them doing right now.
Well, I mean, to use the Few Good Men analogy, John Morosi of MLB Network, the fans are, I guess, Syndergaard is Santiago. The fans have ordered him not to be touched. Then why are they ordering a code red on Syndergaard? What possible reason could they have for taking a clear A-list pitcher who the fans love and gives the Mets name recognition in a Yankee town, with all due respect? Mm-hmm. Why in the world is he even being moved or considered to be moved? And bringing in Stroman for what? I mean, I don't understand what they're trying to achieve and how that might affect the next 24 hours, John. What do you think?
Well, it's a very fair point, Rich. And I think the reason why you would trade Syndergaard now is that you feel as though the Cano-Diaz deal was a mistake.
Oh boy.
Whether they want to admit that or not, this is them throwing the car in reverse and say, wait a minute, that was not a good idea. We have to do something different here. Because what they've done, and this is where you really get into trouble, if you mistime your window, if you tell yourself or your owner that you're ready to win and you're actually not, and you make moves in that direction, then you're in trouble because you've given up your better prospects, which the Mets did in that trade, and now all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute. We're not as good in the present as we thought we were going to be, and now we have set ourselves back for the future. So that's a really bad place to be. In New York or anywhere in the United States to play baseball, they're in a bad spot. And so the reason you trade Syndergaard is that you feel as though you could at least get back some of the value that you lost in a trade that's clearly not working out. So at least I would give them credit for the old adage of when you're digging a hole, stop digging, and then try to reassess things. That's kind of what they're doing now, except, Rich, the problem here is that they've got a pitcher in Syndergaard who, to your point, is popular in New York and is not necessarily having his best season. In fact, he's having his worst season. So how much of a fix is it to really trade someone who has had great value at a time when his value is down? Now, the last few outings have been better, and he's been scouted, and teams know what he's got. But I am very skeptical that they'll be able to get fair value, at least what they think his value is based on what he's done in the past, based on the fact that he's having a little bit of a down year by his own standards. And by the way, Rich, I would say this, and you certainly know this from your connections to New York, I would just say the chances of Syndergaard being traded to the Yankees are effectively zero.
No, I'm sure.
I do not see any plausible way they deal in the city and trade away one of their more recognizable players to their arch rival, at least in terms of winning the back page headline.
Well, if the Astros go ahead and get Bumgarner, it doesn't matter how much the Yankees have been raking and how well they've performed through the first two-thirds of the season and how they've been overcome injuries. I mean, that's a wrap. I mean, and the same thing with the Twins and the Indians and the Red Sox. I mean, that would be – I mean, how do you go in October and it's Bumgarner, Cole, Verlander, that lineup, that manager, that building, that spot? I mean, I don't even know how that would be. I mean, the Dodgers, they're not going to get Bumgarner, clearly. But, I mean, the Dodgers would have to be concerned about that. if the Astros
Sure.
get Bumgarner.
No question. And the interesting thing here, Rich, is a couple things on that topic. Number one, the Astros, they are so leveraged right now for this year. They've got Miley, who's been a consistent starter for them this year. He's a free agent after the season, as is Garrett Cole, and as would be Bumgarner if they got him. So this is, I'm not saying this is the end of their window because they've got a really great lineup that's going to be good for a while, but they're going to have to totally remake their pitching this winter if they want to be competitive next year. Because it's basically, they've got Verlander and very little else in the rotation for sure for next year as it stands right now. That's why I think they actually, while they're talking about Bumgarner, they may actually prefer someone like a Matthew Boyd because they got more years of control on a Boyd. But the Dodger point that you mentioned, Rich, I think is fascinating. This to me is the defining question of this trade deadline. How desperate are the Dodgers to win the World Series? Because you've gotten to the World Series in back-to-back years. You've built a very sustainable, great farm system, at least a very good one. And you've got a closer right now who is wobbly. Kenley Jansen has looked vulnerable at different times this season. I believe, and I realize, the pressure is unique in each market, but Dodger fans cannot stand, I believe, for this team to get to the World Series again and have the bullpen let them down again. That's unacceptable. I would feel that way if I were a Dodger fan. And that's why I think Felipe Vasquez in Pittsburgh is the guy. Now, there was a report from Buster Olney that insisting on Gavin Lux, who is the Dodgers' best minor league hitter. He is phenomenal. And I think if that's the price, I think the Dodgers could safely say no, and I would say that's probably the right decision because he's that good. But anybody else in that system, they've got a number of names. Dustin May is a name. Keibert Ruiz is a name. If I'm the Dodgers, I give up both of those players to get Vasquez because he's under control for multiple years. And Rich, I think for a team that's come so close, and you know that Jansen is vulnerable, you can't go into the World Series again and lose it because of that reason when your team is that good and is almost flawless, almost. But the lack of one major late-inning lefty is a pretty noticeable weakness for them, and they've got to address it today or tomorrow.
All right, it's 4 Eastern tomorrow? Is that when the deadline is? Is that
4
what it is?
p.m. Eastern time.
Okay,
yes.
and you're part of MLB Network's 13 hours of trade deadline coverage tomorrow beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. I will be keeping a close eye, John, on your Eagle Scout reporting of the A-Rod birthday cake that was somehow delivered by Jennifer Lopez during Sunday Night Baseball and then uneaten, untouched. John, there's something afoot. You got to get to the bottom of it. Okay.
I'll get back to you, Rich, and we will eagerly await your return to Ann Arbor sometime this football season, my friend.
I look forward.
Let us know what you're
Thank you,
down
John.
to watch the favorite Big Ten champs that we think, Michigan.
Take care, John. You got it. We'll chat soon.
You bet.
That's John Morosi, MLB Network. Cubs Cardinals tonight on MLB Network at 8 Eastern time.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.